so bored. You need to walk the other way. I tell you once more. Please get out of my way. I don't want you no more. We're done here, boy. I know you think you're so fine, but you can't see clear. I've been wanting to move on.
Hello and welcome to Women Leading in Cannabis. I'm your host, Kyra Reed. Thank you so much for joining us. Our guest today is Jamie Pearson, CEO and president of BHNG Inc. Welcome, Jamie.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Jamie is a business leader with a history of building successful teams. She's an expert in leadership, team building, coaching, and mentoring, and she was selected as High Times Female 50 in 2019 and Top 20 Women of Weed in 2018. Jamie is a rare second-generation cannabis executive. She's been a leader in numerous industries, including real estate finance, investment, and strategic celebrity partnerships. Jamie is widely recognized as a win-win deal-making ninja and leads negotiations for all global joint ventures and licensing deals for BHNG, the world's most awarded and distributed house of brands featuring the 8-time Cannabis Cup winning line of gourmet chocolate bars and an award-winning line of CBD products. Wow. Thank you so much for taking time out of your extremely busy schedule to talk with me today, Jamie. I will admit that I'm a bit of a fangirl. BHNG was my first legal edible, and I have watched the company grow, and I've been so impressed at how you've been able to maintain your position in the industry through all the ups and downs.
That literally just gave me goosebumps. I love it when people approach me and say something like, I had a BHNG bar for the first time, or you were my first edible, or then I know I'm with a friendly. So makes me happy to hear you had a good experience. And I also am amazed that BHNG is still around. Last month was our decade anniversary. We've been in the business for 10 years, which is quite an accomplishment. I've been with BHNG for 5 years, going on 6. So I wasn't there at the beginning, but the ups and downs are right. And I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be in the industry. Super, super grateful that we've had quite a few things, just luck go our way. And I think part of the luck is built when you do things right, and you do things right when no one's looking. And I do think that that's the way BHNG operates. So I think that karma, pays us back always. So anyway, I'm glad to hear that you know our products, you're a fan, and that you're a fangirl. I love that. So thanks. Yeah.
Well, so let's rewind a little bit on your history, because you actually got your start as a real estate mogul. I'm very curious what led you to focusing on a career in cannabis before it was even adult legal. A lot of people, it's an easy answer when it became legal, you jump in, but you made that transition before it was a safe bet.
Well, I think it's funny. I've told this story so many times that I feel like everybody knows my story, but I'll tell you my story and it'll be new to you. My dad is a cannabis cultivator. And he's not a professional. He doesn't have a giant grow, but he's been growing cannabis for 55, going on 56 years. And I'm 51. So it gives you an idea that I've had cannabis in my life, literally my whole life. And so I've grown up around, growing, mites, powdery mildew, all the things that growers talk about. I've grown up in that world. And, the thing about my dad is that he's never been an alcohol drinker. And he's, I think it's easy for us now to, armchair diagnose him as having ADHD. But, that's definitely what I think my dad suffers from. I wouldn't say suffer, but he's a highly functioning pot smoker, and marijuana makes him feel better. It makes him function better. And I think there's this misunderstanding in the world that people who smoke pot get lethargic or lazy or, sit around eating Doritos. My dad was quite the opposite. He would be able to focus better, and do better. He's been a very successful businessman. And, he would attribute a lot of that to marijuana. So he grew his own supply while it was illegal. And, I grew up definitely understanding how to keep a secret, and when I couldn't bring friends home if it smelled like a skunk in our garage, et cetera, et cetera. So that's, the background of my life was that I grew up around cannabis. And then on my mom's side, my first cousin, he's also my best friend. We're 6 months apart in age. Our kids are the same age, is the DJ from Cypress Hill, DJ Muggs. And so, while I was in college, Cypress Hill was at the top of the charts with songs like Hits from the Bong and I Want to Get High. And, they were out there on stages talking about legalization, and, going to jail and, getting really villainized for this plant, which ironically, a lot of people don't realize that being a Schedule I drug, marijuana is considered as dangerous as heroin or methamphetamine. So anyway, I just grew up with it. That's the background. And so when marijuana, I'll cut to the chase. I was also a college athlete, and I played college basketball. I was not a marijuana user. I was not a drug user. And so, that's how marijuana was characterized in my youth. And so if you were smoking pot, you were a drug user. And now I know differently. Now I understand that it's medicine for most people. But I just didn't want anything to do with it, but I grew up around it. So it's one of those sort of wax on, wax off Karate Kid moments. Like when it came time for me to karate chop, I had a lot of latent information and knowledge in my brain. So fast forward, when marijuana became legal in California, it was over 20 years ago, many years ago. It's been legal medically in Montana, where I'm from, for 15, 17 years, a long time. So when you say that I jumped in when it wasn't safe, it's not quite true. It was actually legal when I jumped in. It's still federally illegal. It's still technically not safe. We all do still have concerns about what the federal government can do. But I do believe that you can't put the genie back in the bottle, that marijuana is here to stay. People have gotten addicted to the tax revenue. And it's a matter of time, because so many people wake up every morning in a state where they have access to clean, safe, and legal cannabis, that it will be impossible to get rid of it now, because too many people use it and have their life enhanced by it. So that's kind of my story. The quick answer is that DJ Muggs from Cypress Hill and I have been investing in real estate together for a long time, going on 20 years. And when marijuana was legalized and it came back in vogue, Cypress came back in vogue, and people were hitting them up for weed deals. Oh, put your name on my product, be our sponsor, endorse our product. Muggs came to me and said, we're thinking about doing a deal, but we want to make sure that whatever it is, that we don't get taken advantage of, that it's fair, and we want, basically creative control. We don't want to slap our name in somebody else's product. Will you help us? And that's kind of the very truncated version of a long story, but the answer turned out to be yes. And, 6-7 years later, here I am.
That's a great story. And, I love that one of the things that you mentioned about your dad is actually one of the most pervasive myths about cannabis is that it makes you lazy and lethargic, when in fact, so many people that I know consume all day, and it actually helps them to be far more productive.
I know 2 attorneys that I won't mention their names, but if they're probably not going to listen, but if they did, they would know who they are, that dab all day long. And they are the most high functioning, incredible, sharp-minded human beings, and they dab all day long. Anyway, it's just doing some more realistic depictions of what cannabis use looks like. Because I don't think there's anything out there that isn't people getting high and laughing or doing, ridiculous things. It's just not that way. And those of us in the industry know that. I'm curious, Kyra, what's your cannabis story?
My cannabis story is that I was born and raised in Northern California in a little town called Point Reyes. My mother was a hippie. The people that I used to take care of me grew it. So I've been exposed to cannabis my entire life. And for me, it was always the people who weren't using it and who had a problem with it were the ones that had the problem, that weren't normal. So it's always been a part of my world and a part of my consciousness, and using it to expand my mind and using it as medicine. It's just always been that way. And then, but this interview is about you, not me.
Well, I think it's interesting the comment you made about the people that were not comfortable with cannabis were the ones that kind of had it wrong. And I'll tell you that I was one of those people. I didn't want to be around it. I was afraid of it. I wouldn't say afraid, but I just didn't want to be associated. I didn't want to be called a stoner. I didn't want to be associated with it. I wanted to be that, the athlete that I was, and I wanted to be a scholar, and I wanted to be an achiever, and I wanted to be all these things. And I was 100% this believer that they were mutually exclusive. And yet I had all these in my own life, all of these successful people that were using cannabis every day in front of me. My own life was a testament to that wrong thinking. It's really a story of the power of stigma. And I think part of it has to do with the fact that I grew up in a cattle town of 800 people in the Rocky Mountains. And that small town mentality was very powerful. And, if you were on the wrong side of the community opinion, it could be like truly life or death. Not that they would kill you, but they would ostracize you. And the people that got ostracized, it was miserable, and I didn't want to be there. So, it was like that lesson in that the power of, being worried about what people think. And then what I realize now is I was one of those people, and I had a lot of growing and learning to do. And one of the things that happened was basically that I learned how wrong my thinking was. And now I'm learning so much about cannabis. Every day I still learn about cannabis. And, back in the day, I tried it when I was in college, and it was like nobody was saying, well, I want Gorilla Glue, or I would like Jack Herer, or I would like this. They were like, can you get the weed? And whatever you got was what you got. And,
full of seeds, brown.
Right. And maybe you're smoking, probably something that's been, sitting in someone's closet for too long. And now it's full of, really old and heightened CBN. So you have that sleepy, stonery experience, or you get super paranoid, or whatever it is. And all of those things that are unnecessary, because when you find the cannabis that works for you, you can have a really great experience. And then I think, what is the difference now? I look back and I think I would never want my kids to see me smoking a joint. And I'm thinking, well, they've watched me drink a beer. They've watched me drink a glass of wine. So they've watched me alter my brain in front of them, truly with poison. When you think about the fact that alcohol, you get in the sauna the next day and you smell like a brewery if you've had a couple beers the night before, but 30 days after you smoke a joint, it's still in your bloodstream because your body's holding on to what's in that plant because you have an endocannabinoid system. And we actually benefit from cannabis. Like, it is truly medicine. So I've had all of these aha moments, and I've met the most amazing people. And I do believe that the people who are afraid of it and don't understand it are the ones that we have to be passionate about educating and compassionate and empathetic to their plight of ignorance. But I do truly believe it's a plight of ignorance. And I was one of them, because I was making a judgment without getting information. And what I just always try to preface my comments with, look, I'm not trying to get you to smoke marijuana, and I'm not trying to get you to like it. All I want you to do is to open your mind to the possibility that there's something to this. The comment I always used to make to my kids is, if you see something everywhere, there's something to it. So if you say, ooh, Mom, I don't want to eat raw fish. Sushi sounds disgusting. Well, if there's a sushi restaurant on every corner, there's probably something to it. So that's the moment where you have to open your mind and say, I'm going to try this. And that's kind of the message I have for my friends and family, into cannabis is, don't knock it, inform yourself, get the information you need. It is truly a miraculous plant.
Has cannabis made you a different leader?
That's a good question. I would say no, and I will tell you why. I will say that I use cannabis very rarely. I use alcohol very rarely. I'm definitely one of those people that I prefer to be sharp. I prefer to have my wits about me. Now, when I use cannabis, I use it for sleep because it helps me sleep 2.5 milligrams at night. I sleep like a baby. And after I hit about 45, that wasn't the case. So definitely enhances my sleep. So I would say if I end up well rested because of cannabis, then that makes me a better leader, then yes. But I would tell you, like, philosophically, I've had moments where I've been out using cannabis, having my mind expanded, having some thoughts. I do believe sometimes I have some deeper understanding of the human condition when I'm high. And I don't think, I didn't realize that was possible, but it's been, I like to journal if I'm high. But what I figure out is I don't drink and drive. I won't smoke and drive. So, I'm just one of those safety, careful people, I guess. Maybe you would all call me a stick in the mud. My kids call me Buzz Killian, but that's a whole nother story. The other thing I will tell you about my leadership, though, is that I've been a leader since I was young. I was, I played high school and college basketball. I was captain of both of those teams. I was, in the student body. I've just always been that person, even when I was young. So then when I started, doing real estate, I started my own company. So I've always had employees and teams that I've led. And when you come out of athletics and you've been the team leader, the coach, point guard, coach on the floor, you come into owning your own business and you have employees that look up to you. The reality is, at 51, I've been an entrepreneur and a leader for about 30 years. So cannabis came into my life about 6 or 7 years ago. So most of my leadership characteristics were formed many years ago. So I would say, I believe the kind of leader that I've become is more influenced by my athletic background. I think also I have a degree in women's studies, and I think that education really gave me an appreciation for gender differences and sensitivity to things that I need to be aware of. So all of that, coupled with my small town background, knowing that your reputation precedes you, knowing that people will talk about who you are before they meet you, and then when they meet you, you've either been vilified or somebody's got an opinion of you that's good. And so you basically, it makes your life easier if you walk into new relationships and everyone's like, oh, we've heard about you, you're great, or we've heard about you, and everyone's kind of looking at you like, are you going to yell at us? And I just prefer knowing that if I treat people with empathy and I listen to them and I'm aware of the situation, I'm reading body language, I'm doing all of those things as a leader that I think give me that emotional intelligence. I think I have a pretty high EQ going into my leadership world. Then you build trust with the people that are working with you and for you. And when you have a team that trusts you, you can move mountains. And so that's really my leadership style. And I don't think cannabis has had anything to do with that.
Interesting. One of my questions, actually, I didn't know that that you'd majored in women's studies. So it really informs the question that I want to ask you about: how do you lead the women in your company when they come to you and say they've faced racism or sexism, either within the company or within the industry?
Believe me, I know all that stuff. I've had, my butt pinched and been asked out and been all that stuff. I've had it all happen to me. And the reality is, I never got offended, but none of that stuff triggered things in me. And I also realized that people have things that happen to them where some of that stuff is really harmful. And so what you have to do is believe it. You have to read their, take their temperature and take it seriously. So I had it happen. There was an employee at Bang that was working with a vendor, and the vendor, she would call him and he would say, "What are you wearing?" and stuff like that. And, I laugh because she and I laugh about it now, because she came to me, she's like, "This guy is a creep and I don't want to work with him." And, meanwhile, it was unfortunate because he's a great vendor. And like, on one hand, we wanted to work with him because he was providing the service that we needed provided. On the other hand, I was never going to make her make that phone call again. And, so then I called him and was like, "What are you doing? Like, how do you think that this is okay behavior?" And we're done working with you. It's not a 3 strikes and you're out. It's not I'm going to give you a chance to not behave that way again. It became very clear to me that he doesn't understand boundaries. And all that I was going to do was set her up again to have to deal with him, where there was another situation. You believe him. Second of all, you take action. And, I'm not going to cut someone off at the knees if there was potentially a misunderstanding. I want to go, get the information and figure out what actually happened before I'm like, "You're fired." But at the same time, if what we figure out is this is going to continue because this person's not able to make good decisions, and then I'm going to fire you, and we're going to be done with that. We're going to move on and find a vendor that isn't going to behave that way. So that's the long answer. But it's something that I feel passionate about, because I do think I've just learned something in that #MeToo thing. But then the other thing I realize is there are people that use that they use it to manipulate, and that's unfortunate. And it happens in every scenario, in every type of situation where people are victims, not just #MeToo. And then what happens is people focus on that, and that becomes the issue. And I will tell you that I don't know what the percentage is, but the majority of the percentage, most of the women are telling the truth. And I don't want to ever discount something like that, because, 1 or 2 people in the history of the past have misused that. And so, I just think about that all the time, that you've got to be open to hearing the information, but you have to take action and believe them.
I think it's really interesting that you come from a world of athletics. And I know a lot of women who've done really well in male-dominated environments because, they, like you said, you kind of become like a guy and you just let it roll off your back and you don't. But as we've come to learn, these microaggressions, they actually take a real toll over time and put women in the position where we're constantly the ones who have to make people feel comfortable with our presence, with our needs. And, as we've come into this era right now of the Black Lives Matter really finally being pushed to the forefront, we're also seeing how much burden the women of color are carrying. Not just are they carrying the burden of the women, but they're also carrying the burden of these microaggressions, of racism, and having to be the performative ally, right? Where they're making other people feel comfortable with their discomfort. So I'm curious how you see women in the industry. Do you think that cannabis is good for women in the industry in terms of a place to work? Do you see that we have an opportunity here that we don't have in other industries, maybe to take some power? And if so, how do you think that we can move into more of a position to have a stronger voice and a stronger presence throughout all levels of the industry?
Yes, I believe the cannabis is good for women. I believe it's a great industry for women. I think the main reason that I believe that is precisely because we're in prohibition. And right now, the real money hasn't arrived yet. There won't be real money in cannabis until there's banking. And business structure happens like this. I'm Joe Blow. I've got a gazillion dollars. I send my kid to prep school. He goes on to Princeton or wherever. And this cycle of privilege, you can even start in the middle class. I'm Joe Blow. I own my home. I own my car. I have a decent job. I have an education. And I prepare my children at the dinner table to, repeat. And, I'm golfing. I'm on the board of this. I'm on the board of that. And so you basically have people putting other people in positions of access to power who look like them and sound like them. That is not evil. It's not inherently evil. There is nothing wrong with that. That is what people do. We hang out with the people that we look like and sound like, or that we grew up with, or that we went to school with, and we have this sphere of influence. And so when power resides in a particular sphere of influence, it's cyclically going to stay there. Not because there's this desire to exclude, which there is, and I think we can talk about that later, but because there is this natural desire to be comfortable and hang out and be with people and do business with people that look and sound like us. And so essentially, if you have the power residing in the white male hierarchy, and then it's not going to leave the white male hierarchy, not because they're saying women are stupid and people of color shouldn't have access to power, but because they're going to say, oh, I golf with Joe Blow and he's amazing and he should be on the board because he has this skill set. And the reality is, how is a woman or a person of color going to get a skill set if they don't have access to board positions, executive positions, leadership positions? And slowly but surely, that's been chipped away at by, the federal government has made rules about access. Women and people of color have finally been able to own property. Women weren't allowed to have bank accounts in our name, I think, until the late 60s. People don't realize that. We barely got the right to vote not too long ago. Like, we're talking about generational wealth and generational power that stays cyclically where it always has been. And that's normal. It's natural. But the reality is, the only way that changes is if there is an on purpose, very intentional sharing of access. And I this is my soapbox. And I always tell people, we have people of color rotting in prison right now, sucking off tax dollars. We are spending tax dollars to have people caged like animals over a couple of joints or a pound of marijuana, stuff that we're making money on now. It is unconscionable. And it is time for us as an industry to share our power on purpose and our access. And so what I believe is, right now, cannabis is an opportunity for people like me and people who believe like me to say that enough's enough. We're going to disrupt that cycle of power, and we're going to go give access to people who don't look like us. In my case, to other women as well. And we're going to say, I'm going to deliberately make sure that people of color have access to power. So an example of what I did was, when our founder asked me to be on the board of Bang, before we went public, I said, who am I going to be on the board with? And he sent me the deck, and I said, there's no way I'm going to be on the board with 5 white guys. I'm like, it's just, A, optically, it's a bad look in cannabis. B, it's just wrong. And either you let one of those guys go, and, or preferably more than one, and we have a diverse board, or you can count me out. And so I won't tell you what he said, but he did that. And now we have a Black man on the board, and he's the chairman of the board, and he is a M&A cross-border specialist. He has a law practice that is licensed in New York and in Canada. He specializes in cross-border mergers and acquisitions for publicly traded companies, uber qualified to be on our board. Absolutely fantastic mind. And he wouldn't be sitting on our board if I hadn't demanded at least one position be given to somebody of color. So now we have a woman and a person of color on our 5-person board. So it's it's a start, but it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't said, I'm going to do this on purpose. And I think where I believe we could be making changes in cannabis right now is we could have companies like the Canadian Securities Exchange, the TSX, even NASDAQ. We can be going to them and pressuring them to say, you will not accept publicly traded companies that do not have diverse boards. They could actually create that as a standard, and we could no longer have publicly traded companies that exist that don't have diverse boards. There are easy ways for us to make changes, and we can start by doing it in cannabis and, as a disruptive organization. So what I believe is the other thing, there's money to be had that is not risk averse, because right now the big money that's all risk averse money, they're not playing in cannabis right now. So the people that are willing to take chances are willing to take chances on people that maybe don't have those extensive backgrounds and resumes. And it's an opportunity for people to say, I'm the CEO of a publicly traded company, I'm female, or I'm a person of color. And then when it's time to have a board seat, there you go. You've got that experience, and you become eligible, and we can start infiltrating business by using cannabis as our Trojan horse. But I'm saying this, I know it all sounds so, super spyish or sort of a deviant model, but I don't mean it that way. And the way I mean it, though, in the end is we know that diversity actually creates more profit, because imagine if you've got a board of 5 white men and you're trying to create a product that is supposed to appeal to Black women, Hispanic women, Asian women, Black men, gays and lesbians, and all of these people that they don't walk a mile in those people's shoes. So how could they possibly make a great?
I really, really admire you for taking a stand. I don't think it sounds secret spyish. I think it is the position of leadership that cutting edge leaders, that enlightened leaders are taking. And without leaders like you in our industry, we'll never change. So thank you for everything that you're doing for women and people of color in the industry, because statistics show across the board, no matter what industry you're in, when you hire a diverse workforce, you have less turnover, more productivity, and a better bottom line. The statistics don't lie. Having a diverse workforce brings so many different ideas to the table that you just wouldn't get if you have everyone of the same color and sex. So I'm 100% behind you. I appreciate everything you're doing to make this change in the industry.
If anybody takes anything away from this interview, it's that that the practice that I'm doing has really benefited the company, because the team that we have, man, I am so proud of our team and the things that they accomplish every single day. I honestly, we're like a family, and we're in sync. We push the rock in the same direction, we always say. And my heart bursts when I think about the team that we have at Bhang. I'm super lucky. I am so lucky. Every day I wake up, everybody on my team, when they call me, I look forward to talking to them. We look forward to our team meetings. We have fun. Cannabis should be fun. And Bhang's mission is to turn the fairly enjoyable into the ridiculously fun. So think about that. Like every day, that's our mission. And that's what our team is trying to accomplish. And it's been a wild ride. It's been really, really fun. And I think at the end of the day, if you can change the world, if you can enhance people's lives by providing them a product that makes their life better, and you get to turn the fairly enjoyable into the ridiculously fun, I am clearly doing something right.
And what you're doing right is changing the narrative. The narrative does not need to be if others succeed. If one group succeeds, another group has to fail. That's not what this is all about. And I think you're showing very clearly in your leadership at Bhang that it's to the benefit of everyone. to have diversity and inclusion. And yet we still need leaders who will stand up and make sure that that happens. So it sounds like you have an incredible team, and I bet they're all very grateful to be working there. So let's bring this to a close on a really positive note. I would love to hear from you. Who are your female mentors or leaders that inspire you, and why?
Wow, I have so many. I would say number one would be Michelle Obama. I just absolutely adore her. I'd love to meet her someday. I think she's incredible. And what she's been able to accomplish, sort of behind the scenes has, just her education, everything. She's so articulate and oh man, she's, I would bow down to her. I'm a big fan of Madeleine Albright. I think Madeleine Albright, when I think about her in all of those rooms, foreign diplomacy, she was so good at what she did, and was also well respected. Every room she left, people respected her, and it was never about her gender. It was about her job. And I think, she was a great role model in that. The other women that come to mind in the industry, I talk about them all the time, is the Knox doctors. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but
I am.
Dr. Janice, Dr. Rachel, and Dr. Jessica, they are the example of being educated in a thoughtful way, of being articulate, of being patient, and of having, a really admirable mission that they go out and, they go out and fight the good fight every single day. And they do it with so much grace and poise and intelligence. And I feel really fortunate to call them friends. I have a woman in my circle, Bobby Paley, who's an investor, and, she teaches me a lot about soft power. There's Kim Kovacs she runs ArcView with Gene Sullivan, and those two women are so smart and talented. Jessica Billingsley at Akerna is a woman that I admire. She's in a man's world and has her company public on NASDAQ, and has just shown us what it means to, keep her head high. And I look at Kim Rivers at Trulieve, and Kim Rivers is another woman that, I admire her a lot. She's done, she's kicking butt. When you look at what's going on at Trulieve and you look at the numbers of profitable cannabis companies, she's the leader of the pack. I admire Jacinda, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, and Angela Merkel. And I look at there's so many. I could go on and on and on. And I think we have so many examples in the world of strong, powerful women, both in our industry and, just in general. And then I think about, who am I forgetting? I know that I'm going to get off this interview and I'm going to think, oh, why didn't I say that person or that person? There are so many. So if I've forgotten you, I'm sorry, because there are too many really for me to just rattle them all off. One of the women that I really admire is, I don't know if you know Jessica Hooper, but she has a blog called On the Fence, and she does work with Carlos and Salvador Santana, and she's working to bring diversity into the cannabis space. And man, she's smart, and her On the Fence blog is really cool, where she invites women to come talk about a time where they've been on the fence about something.
Oh, interesting.
Right. And then when you hear other people's stories where they're talking about, well, I was thinking about this, and here were the pros and cons, and here's what I did, and here was the outcome. And I think bringing people's stories, to the forefront so that we can all benefit from them, it's big stuff. There's a recruiter in Silicon Valley. Her name's Liz Gale Search Partners. I think she's a really good recruiter in the cannabis space. Obviously I could go on, and I want to say though that I have some women in my team. Samantha Collins is our CMO, and she's a rock star. And Nicole Hanratty is our global director of marketing. And I'll tell you that Bang is the 400-pound gorilla in the room because of those two women. They are really the people that turn, water into wine. They're amazing. So, like I said, I could go on for days, and, maybe one day that's what we'll do. But Kim Kovacs is putting together, she wants to get 1 million women in cannabis, and she's putting together a group that is trying to go achieve 1 million women employed in cannabis worldwide. And anyway, if you haven't interviewed Kim, you really should. She's amazing.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Jamie. I really have enjoyed listening to you and learning from you. And I wanted to talk more about Bang, but I feel like this was the conversation that needed to occur. So please come back and let's dig in a little bit more about Bang and your experience there. But thank you so much for sharing so much of your wisdom and your honesty with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I'd love to come back and talk about Bang. We have a lot of good stuff coming, and it's exciting to talk about. So anytime you want to have me back, I'd be super happy to do it.
And thank you, ladies, for tuning in. If you haven't yet joined the Women Empowered in Cannabis community, go to our website, womenempoweredInCannabis.com, and find the group that's right for you, including the new Women of Color group, which is hosted by the lovely Miss Kindness. And mark your calendar for September 30th. The Women in Plant Medicine Summit is coming. It's a full-day summit featuring women working in prohibited plant medicines. Tracks include science and research, psychedelic studies, and self-care. Tickets start at $10, and you can RSVP at houseofjane.com. I hope to see you there, ladies. Tune in again next Tuesday for another interview with women who are leading cannabis.